Loops from a library are designed to conform to tempo changes because they have triggers built into them. And when the tempo changes, those triggers get closer together or further apart. The audio that we record into ProTools doesn't have those triggers unless we build them in. Beat Detective allows us to do that. You'd use this if you had a performance by a band and someone didn't quite play to the click or weren't dead on, as opposed to a loop, which we're pretty confident doesn't have a wobbly tempo. Now, I have to say here at the outset, I have a friend who calls this beat defective because there are a lot of settings and parameters in this app, and sometimes it will give you unwanted results. So let's take a look at what it does, and then you can decide what you want to call it. I know that this drum loop is just about 100 beats a minute, although I see a little discrepancy maybe between the lines here. We'll call it 100. If I want to change the tempo, I go to the Event menu, Tempo Operations, and the Tempo Operations window, and this allows me to set a master tempo for the session. I can also start a new tempo at bar 6, let's say, or bar 60, and then have it last until some other point where it changes again. And then this button lets me preserve the tempo after selection. So that means continue on at the new tempo or change back to the previous tempo. Be sure that you hit the apply button when you use this window, otherwise the change doesn't take effect. So we'll leave this at 100 for now. Close this window. So we get to Beat Detective in the same event menu. It's a little over halfway down here. The hotkey is Command 8 on the keypad for a Mac and Control 8 on the keypad for a PC. And this is the Beat Detective window. Beat Detective can do 5 things that are listed here if we're working with an audio file. And if I switch to MIDI, the last 3 things are grayed out. It can only do the top 2. So for now, we're dealing with audio. Let me play you this little drum loop. So a little 2-bar phrase, and we're pretty confident it's right about 100 beats per minute. Beat Detective does its detecting by looking at transients, the peaks in the audio files. Something with lots of attack and little sustain is the ideal candidate, like this drum loop, things that are percussive in nature. Something that's harder to detect is a string section that's sustaining notes. You can't blame the detective if there are no clues for it to work with. So let's say our goal is to get this drum loop to play a little faster. We saw in a previous movie that we can time compress trim it and make it play a little bit faster. But let's try and do it this way, and you can see if Beat Detective is a more useful tool for you. So we're going to set triggers in this loop that doesn't currently have them. I want to analyze the loop. Of course, I have to select the loop and analyze it. So it found transients there. It found a bunch of them. And depending on where I set this analysis sensitivity, it's going to find more of them. That's pretty much it. It ended at about 30 something. It can also search for bars, in which case it found a few. And it can also search for subbeats. So how many triggers you put in is really kind of a function of how much do you want to change it. How often do you want to re-trigger the pieces of this loop? So I'm going to settle for beats. I kind of like where it put things at around 20-ish here. Now, I find this very helpful to show the trigger time because I think that this is bar 1, beat 2, and I think that this should be bar 1, beat 3, and actually should be over there. We'll do that in a second. But it's really helpful to me to kind of reach inside Pro Tools' mind and see, does it agree with me? And the first thing I see that is a problem is it's giving me a mark for bar 3, beat 1. I don't want a mark for bar 3, beat 1. Bar 3, beat 1 is back here. It's at the end of the loop. So I'm going to say the last one I want you to give me is bar 2, beat 4. And then I'm going to analyze again. And now I don't agree with Pro Tools at all here. So let's try the analysis again. It's trying, but let's do that. Capture the selection, but not 3, 1, 2, and 4. Capture that. Being very fussy here, but it didn't give me a 3, 1. So I think I'm okay with that. I agree with where it put that one, that one, that one, that one, that one. I don't agree with where it put this one. I'm going to move it over to where I think it should be. I don't know why it thinks that's the beat. It was doing really fine here, guessing all the way up to there. And I think it looks good now. Let me just emphasize that if I don't have this button checked, I know that it's put markers there, but I don't know what it's calling them. And now that I take a closer look here, I do want to move this one back just a smidgen to get right on top of that peak. And let's just double check. Yes, 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 yes. So it seems to have placed triggers in the proper places. So that's how to define the triggers. And in the next movie, we'll see what we can do with them.